The first time I met Zaria El-Amin, she was standing barefoot on top of her father's grand dining table, holding a champagne bottle in one hand and laughing like the world owed her nothing. She was chaos wrapped in silk, unapologetically loud and impossible to ignore. The guards outside had already warned me that the heiress had a reputation, but I wasn't prepared for the sharpness of her gaze or the way she seemed to challenge gravity with every step. Her eyes caught mine the moment I entered the room. The laughter died in her throat and a smirk replaced it. "Lei, you must be the bodyguard," she said, voice laced with mockery. "They really went all out this time. You don't smile much, do you?" I didn't answer. I just scanned the room, noting exits, the angle of windows, and anything that could compromise security. I wasn't here to entertain her. She jumped down, feet landing softly on the marble floor. Her silk robe shifted, revealing the curve of her shoulder. She made no effort to adjust it. "Do you have a name, or should I just call you Miss Ice Queen?" "Solane Varga," I replied. "Solene," she repeated slowly, as if testing how it tasted on her tongue. Strong name, cold voice. I turned away and started inspecting the room. "I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to make sure you stay alive." She followed behind me, arms crossed, eyes studying me. "Do I look like I need saving?" I didn't answer. She didn't need saving. She needed discipline, structure, a leash. Her father had hired me after a series of threatening messages had been sent anonymously to the estate. It was likely tied to his recent business decisions, but the threats had Zaria's name all over them. As usual, she brushed it off as a joke, another excuse to rebel harder. Later that evening, I was assigned quarters just down the hall from her bedroom. Proximity was protocol. I unpacked quickly, efficiently, lining up my gear and verifying emergency protocols. I didn't expect her to barge in while I was loading my weapon. "Is that for me?" she asked, eyes on the pistol in my hands. "Do you always walk into people's rooms uninvited?" "Only when I'm bored." She walked farther inside, ignoring the boundary she just crossed. "I thought bodyguards were supposed to be big and bulky like hired statues." "Disappointed?" She tilted her head, half smiling. Intrigued. I stared at her. Her robe was looser now, her bare collarbone visible, her hair still damp from a recent shower. She knew what she was doing. She enjoyed testing people. "Go back to your room," I said. "Why, you scared of me?" "No, I just don't entertain games." She stepped closer. "You don't look like the entertaining type, but you're the first person here who doesn't treat me like a porcelain doll. That's new." She turned and walked away, leaving the door wide open. That was how every day with Zaria felt. A challenge, a test of willpower. She'd try to get under my skin, and I'd pretend she didn't exist. But pretending wasn't easy. On the third night, I accompanied her to a gallery event. She wore a deep red dress that shimmered under the chandeliers, her makeup sharp, her confidence louder than the music playing in the background. I kept a step behind her, scanning the crowd, watching her sip wine and entertain whispers. She leaned in once, whispering, "Do you ever blink, Solene? Or are you just built that way?" "Keep moving," I replied. She laughed and moved forward, brushing past a group of men who turned their heads to watch her. One of them made a comment I couldn't quite hear, but I caught the tone. Zaria turned sharply, walking back toward him with a mischievous smile. Before she could open her mouth, I stepped in front of her. "Stay close to me," I said. She looked up at me, surprised. "Why? You think I'm going to get kidnapped by art collectors?" "I think you like starting fires just to watch the smoke. And you like pretending you're made of steel." That night, when we returned to the estate, she didn't go straight to her room. She followed me to the back patio, sat on the edge of the stone bench, and stared at the stars. "You know, I wasn't always like this," she said quietly. I stayed silent. My father raised me in glass. Polished, untouchable, controlled, so I shattered it. I glanced at her. Her face was softer now, her voice stripped of sarcasm. "You think I'm just a brat," she continued, "but I see the way you look at me, Solene, like you're trying not to." I clenched my jaw. "You're my assignment." Is that the only reason you keep your distance? I didn't answer. She stood slowly, walking closer, eyes locked with mine. For a moment, I forgot every rule. Her fingers brushed against my wrist. You can lie to yourself, Celine, but you can't lie to your eyes. I stepped back. Go to bed. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. She turned and walked away, leaving a trail of silence behind her. That night, I stayed awake longer than I should have. Not because of threats, not because of duty, but because for the first time in years, my armor didn't feel so impenetrable. The next morning, I found Zaria already awake, sitting by the fountain in the courtyard with a cigarette between her fingers and a journal in her lap. The early sunlight hit her hair in soft waves, making her look almost peaceful, almost harmless. But I'd learned better. She didn't say a word when she noticed me watching her. She just took a slow drag and scribbled something on a fresh page. It felt like she was daring me to ask what she was writing, but I didn't bite. Instead, I went about my usual check of the perimeter. There had been another anonymous message delivered overnight, this time slipped under the front gate in a plain envelope. No signature. Just a photo of Zaria at last night's gallery event with the words, "Next time closer," written in black marker across it. I handed the photo over to the estate's head of security and immediately doubled patrols. I also moved Zaria's schedule to minimum exposure outings only. She didn't take that news well. You're limiting me to 2 events a week? She snapped as we stood in her walk-in closet. What am I, a prisoner? You're a target, I said. That photo wasn't a joke. I've been a target since birth, she replied, throwing a silk dress onto the floor. People either want to marry me, use me, or kill me, but they never want to know me. I paused. I'm not any of those people. She looked at me again, quieter now. Then who are you? I'm the one making sure you see the next sunrise. Her eyes softened just slightly. Then she turned away, pulling another dress from the rack. Fine, but you're not choosing what I wear. I might be on a shorter leash, but I still get to bark when I want. I couldn't help it. My lips curved ever so slightly. She noticed and grinned. Was that a smile, Celine? I feel honored. That afternoon, a package was delivered. It was addressed to Zaria, no return label. I opened it before it reached her room. Inside was a velvet box with a single gold locket inside. Nothing strange at first glance, but inside the locket was a photo of Zaria as a child, taken from a private family album I knew wasn't accessible to the public. On the opposite side was a small, etched message. We were close once. I remember your heartbeat. I didn't give her the box. I sent it to the tech team for analysis. When Zaria found out, she stormed into the security office. You don't get to decide what I see or don't see, she hissed. I do when someone is clearly trying to manipulate your emotions, I said firmly. That locket was mine to open. You would have spiraled, and whoever sent it knows that. She was shaking now, not from rage, but something else. Her voice dropped. Do you think it's someone from the inside? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't rule it out, and she knew that. That night, she didn't go to her room. She came to mine. I heard the knock and opened the door to find her standing there in a loose hoodie and slippers, her eyes tired. I couldn't sleep, she said softly. Every shadow outside my window feels like a whisper. I let her in. She sat on the couch, hugging a pillow to her chest, unusually quiet. I didn't speak either. I just sat nearby, watching the moonlight spill across the floor. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing, she whispered. Like the louder I laugh, the less I exist. You're not invisible, I said. She looked at me. But you never look at me like I'm real. You look at me like I'm a task. That's not true. Her expression shifted, like she was trying to read between the lines of my face. Then she stood and walked toward me. You think I'm just a spoiled girl who plays dress up with danger, she said. No, I think you're a hurricane pretending to be a breeze. She paused, eyes wide. That's the first poetic thing you've ever said. I didn't mean for it to sound poetic. It was just the truth. She stepped closer. Then why do you keep pulling away from me? Because I can't protect you and want you at the same time. That hung in the air like a thunderclap. Her hand brushed my arm, slowly, deliberately. I didn't move. Maybe I don't want to be protected tonight, she said softly. I looked into her eyes. They were steady, brave, honest. I do, I said, even if you don't. She stared at me for a long second, then nodded, stepping back. Okay. She curled up on my couch and fell asleep. I sat in the chair across from her, watching her breathing slow, her fists unclench. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I found a note she'd left on my desk before she went back to her room. Thank you for seeing me when I didn't want to be seen. Z. Later that day, while reviewing security footage, I noticed something strange. A figure had slipped through the garden perimeter shortly after midnight. They didn't make it into the main house, but they got close. Closer than anyone should. I alerted the team, called for a lockdown drill, and increased armed surveillance. When I told Zaria, her reaction surprised me. She wasn't scared, she was angry. I won't let them control me through fear, she said. I refuse to shrink just because someone wants me afraid. You don't have to shrink, I said, but you have to be smart. I am smart, that's why I trust you. Those words hit me harder than they should have. In the days that followed, she stayed closer to me. Not just physically, but emotionally. She shared more stories, more vulnerabilities, more silence. We developed a rhythm. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't romance. It was something tangled between safety and longing. But even that fragile thread wasn't safe. One night, I caught her sneaking off through the back hallway. I followed her to the garden where she was waiting near a fountain with her phone in hand, looking nervous. What are you doing out here? I asked. She startled. I thought I could meet someone quickly, just for a few minutes. Who? Someone who says they know who's been threatening me. You didn't tell me? I didn't want you to stop me. The anger burned hot in my chest. You put yourself in danger for a whisper of a clue? I was desperate, she said, voice breaking. I didn't want you to think I was weak. You're not weak, I said sharply, but you're reckless. She turned away, frustrated. Why do you care so much, Soline? Why does it bother you this much if I get hurt? I walked up to her, close enough to feel her breath. Because you matter more than you should. She froze. The space between us collapsed into silence. The tension between us lingered long after that night in the garden. Zaria kept her distance the next day, retreating into the safety of her suite, responding to my presence with short, clipped words. I let her have the space, but I never let my guard down. Whoever had been toying with her was getting bolder, and I wasn't about to give them an opening. Security had identified faint shoe prints near the north perimeter wall, fresh from the night before. They didn't match any of the staff. Someone had been watching. Waiting. I ran through every possibility. A former business rival of her family, a personal enemy, or someone much closer, someone she never suspected. By the time evening arrived, she had emerged from her room, draped in a deep emerald gown for an exclusive charity gala downtown. I had pushed for her to cancel, but she refused. I refuse to live in a cage, she said simply. She looked stunning, but I didn't tell her that. Instead, I tightened the strap of my shoulder holster beneath my suit and escorted her to the car. The gala was an ocean of wealth and whispered conversations. Chandeliers hung low, casting warm golden light over the polished floors. Zaria slipped into her role effortlessly, offering charming smiles, trading sharp-witted remarks with high society figures. To everyone else, she was untouchable, but I could see it. The way her shoulders tensed ever so slightly, the way she glanced over her shoulder as if expecting someone to be there. I was always there. Halfway through the night, she excused herself from a conversation and walked toward the balcony. I followed, keeping a short distance, my hand never far from my weapon. I know you're there, she said without turning around. I stepped closer, leaning against the railing. You should stay inside. She exhaled softly, the city lights reflecting in her dark eyes. Do you ever stop? Not when it comes to your safety. She turned to face me fully. And what about when it comes to me? The question hung in the air. The space between us felt fragile, stretched thin by the weight of everything unsaid. Before I could respond, a movement in the crowd caught my eye. A man in a black suit, standing too still, his gaze locked on Zaria. I memorized his face in seconds. Inside. Now. She didn't argue. She saw the look in my eyes and obeyed. I followed after her, scanning the room, tracking the man's movements. He didn't follow us, but he didn't leave either. He wanted to be seen. Once we were inside, I spoke into my earpiece, giving quiet orders to my security team. I kept my hand lightly on Zaria's back, guiding her through the crowd. She leaned in close. Is it him? I don't know yet, I said, but I'm not taking any risks. The ride back to the estate was silent. She didn't ask questions, and I didn't give her answers I wasn't sure of yet. When we arrived, I personally checked every entrance, every window, every possible vulnerability. It wasn't until she stepped out of her heels and unpinned her hair that she spoke again. Do you think they'll stop? I met her gaze. Not until we stop them first. For the first time, she looked scared. Not just cautious, not just angry. Truly scared. I hated seeing that. She sat on the edge of her bed, rubbing her temples. I don't even know what they want from me. They want to control you, I said, through fear, through doubt. They want you to feel alone. She looked up at me. But I'm not alone. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That night, I didn't leave my usual post outside her door. I sat in the chair in her room instead, keeping watch as she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. At some point in the early hours, she stirred. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Celine? I'm here, I said. She sighed and turned over. Good. The next morning, I received a message on my private phone, a single line of text. Not everything is as it seems. No number, no traceable sender. I didn't tell Zaria. Instead, I pulled every record I could find on the past threats she had received, cross-referencing names, locations, anything that could give me an edge. One name kept appearing. Émile Laurent. A former associate of her father, a man who had been forced out of the family's inner circle years ago after a business deal had gone south. He had vanished from the public eye, but whispers of his return had surfaced recently. I showed Zaria his photo. She stared at it for a long time. He used to visit our home when I was little. I studied her expression. Do you remember anything about him? He used to bring me gifts, she said softly. Little things. A locket once. My pulse quickened. Was it gold? Her eyes widened. Yes. The pieces clicked into place. The locket that had been sent to her wasn't just a taunt. It was a message from someone who had been close enough to matter. Someone who knew how to shake her. We need to find him, I said. She nodded, gripping the edge of the table. Before he finds me first. That afternoon, I arranged a meeting with one of my sources. A man who dealt in secrets, trading information for the right price. We met in a quiet cafe outside the city, a place where cameras didn't exist, where conversations disappeared into the hum of espresso machines. He slid a folder across the table. Laurent has been in the shadows for years, but he's back. Word is, he's been watching her for months, waiting for the right moment. I clenched my jaw. What does he want? The man hesitated. Revenge. But not just on her. I stilled. Who else? The answer made my stomach drop. You. I pushed back from the table. Why? The man exhaled. Because you were the one who put him in the dark all those years ago. He's not just after her, Celine. He's after both of you. I left without another word, my mind racing. Back at the estate, Zaria was pacing in the study, her arms crossed. What did you find out? She asked the second I stepped inside. I met her gaze. It's not just you he wants. Her expression shifted. Who else? I took a slow breath. Me. For the first time since this started, her confidence faltered. Then we fight him together, she said. I wanted to tell her that I would handle it alone, that she didn't need to be part of this. But I knew better. Zaria had never been one to stand on the sidelines. Zaria stood beside me in the dimly lit study, her fingers clenching the edge of the desk. I could see the weight of everything beginning to settle on her shoulders. Her world had been turned inside out, and now she had to face the reality that danger had a name, a face, and a personal history. Emile Laurent was not just an enemy from her family's past. He was my enemy too. A ghost from a time I had buried deep, from operations I never spoke about, not even to her. But now he had returned, weaving himself back into our lives with quiet precision. I began preparing for the next move. I doubled the estate security, rerouted surveillance systems, and encrypted our internal communications. Zaria insisted on being involved in every step. She asked questions, took notes, and made decisions. "You're not just protecting me anymore," she said one afternoon, her voice firm. "We protect each other now." There was no arguing with her resolve. But I couldn't stop the nagging worry that pulsed at the back of my mind. Emile was too calculated. He never appeared without a purpose. He was always 3 steps ahead. And if he had already left messages and made himself visible at the gala, then something bigger was coming. 3 nights later, it did. It started with a power outage. At first, it seemed like a technical failure, a minor glitch, but I knew better. Seconds later, the emergency generators kicked in, bathing the estate in dim lighting. I grabbed my weapon and moved quickly. Zaria was already by the staircase when I met her, holding a flashlight, her eyes wide but steady. "I heard something outside," she said. I nodded. "Stay behind me." We moved through the hallway in silence. The security team was already sweeping the grounds. I directed 2 of them toward the perimeter, but my instincts told me the breach was already inside. And I was right. The noise came from the conservatory. Glass cracked, a shadow moved. I raised my gun and stepped into the room, Zaria close behind. A figure darted past the tall plants and toward the side entrance. I didn't hesitate. I gave chase, heart-pounding, boots slamming against the marble. The intruder was fast, agile, slipping through corridors like they knew the layout. I cornered them near the West Wing staircase. They turned suddenly and lunged. We collided hard, my back hitting the wall. The gun slipped from my grip, skidding across the floor. The figure wore a mask, but I saw the eyes behind it. Cold, calculated. We struggled, fists connecting, movements sharp and brutal, but I was trained for this. I used the attacker's momentum to flip them onto the ground, pinning them beneath me. Zaria rushed over and grabbed the weapon. The masked intruder froze, then suddenly released a small device from their pocket and slammed it into the floor. A blinding flash of light burst out. By the time my vision cleared, the attacker was gone. Security swept the grounds again, but they had vanished. Not a trace left. Zaria stood in the hallway, still holding the gun, her fingers trembling. "They got in," she whispered. "They really got in." I took the weapon gently from her hand. "And they'll try again." We spent the rest of the night reviewing security footage, trying to find any clue, any frame that showed how the intruder got in or out, but everything had been planned with precision. The attacker had bypassed everything. "This wasn't just a warning," I said. "This was a test. They wanted to see how far they could go." Zaria sat across from me, eyes sharp. "Then we give them nothing else." I hesitated, then finally said what I had been holding in for days. "We need to go underground. Just for a while. Somewhere off the grid, somewhere they won't expect." She was quiet for a moment. "You mean disappear?" "Just long enough to draw them out," I said. "If they think we're vulnerable, they'll make a move. And when they do, we'll be ready." Reluctantly, she agreed. Within hours, I arranged everything. We left the estate at nightfall using an old emergency protocol I had designed years ago. The safe house was nestled deep in the countryside, a modern structure surrounded by hills, far from surveillance, far from eyes. The first day was quiet. Too quiet. Zaria explored the house, checked the systems, asked me questions about every security detail. "I didn't think I'd ever have to live like this," she said one morning as we shared breakfast by the window. "No one ever does," I replied. But something about the isolation brought us closer. Without the chaos of the city or the constant threat around us, the silence created space for words we hadn't said. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, she sat beside me on the porch. "Do you ever regret becoming a protector?" she asked. I looked at her. "No, I only regret not meeting you sooner." She smiled faintly. "Even with everything that's happening?" "Especially because of everything that's happening," I said, "because it showed me how much I'm willing to fight for you." She reached for my hand. Then we fight together. For a moment, it was peaceful. Until my phone buzzed. A new message, no number, just coordinates. And a single line. "Come alone or she disappears." My grip tightened. Zaria saw my expression. "What is it?" I hesitated, then handed her the phone. Her eyes widened as she read the message. "It's him." I nodded. "He's making his move." She stood, her voice steady. "Then we make ours." "No, you're staying here," I said quickly. "It's a trap." "I don't care. I'm not hiding anymore." I saw the determination in her eyes. I knew there was no talking her out of it, so I changed tactics. "Then we go together, but we control the trap." That night, we packed what we needed. I mapped out the location from the coordinates, a remote warehouse on the outskirts of a neighboring city. We arrived at dawn, disguised and ready. The place looked abandoned, but I could feel eyes watching. Inside, the air was thick with tension. We moved carefully through the shadows. Then a voice echoed. "You always did like to make things difficult, Celine." Emile stepped out of the dark, calm and collected, as if we were old friends. Zaria's breath caught. "You don't get to talk to her," I said sharply, stepping between them. He laughed. "Protective, as always." I raised my weapon. "What do you want?" His smile faded. "What I've always wanted. Balance, justice. And now you're going to give it to me." Emile's voice echoed through the warehouse, cold and deliberate. He stepped further into the light, hands behind his back, as if we were in a polite meeting rather than a trap. Zaria moved slightly behind me, her eyes never leaving him. I could feel her heart racing, but she stood steady. "What do you mean by justice?" I asked, keeping my weapon trained on him. He smiled faintly. "Justice for all the things your family buried, all the secrets, all the choices that destroyed lives while protecting your empire." Zaria's jaw clenched. "If you have a problem with the choices my father made, then deal with me. But don't pretend this is about justice. You're doing this for revenge." I moved a step forward. "You came after her to hurt me. This isn't about balance. It's about trying to settle old scores." "Old scores leave scars," he said softly. "Some don't heal. Some need to be reopened before they disappear." Behind him, the sound of footsteps broke the tension. More of his men emerged from the shadows. 4, maybe 5. Armed, positioned in a loose semicircle. I scanned their movements, my mind calculating escape routes, timing, possible outcomes. "I give you one chance," I said, voice low. "Let us walk out, and no one gets hurt." Emile chuckled, still trying to control the outcome. Always the protector. "I don't control outcomes," I said. "I prepare for them." Zaria stepped forward beside me. "You think hurting me will fix what happened years ago? You're wrong, because I'm not afraid of you." Her voice didn't waver. She was fearless in a way that both impressed and worried me. Emile's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of frustration beneath his calm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I'm here to expose the truth. Your father left behind a trail of secrets buried under fake contracts, hidden facilities, and offshore accounts. You inherited his name, but not his sins. You deserve to know what empire you're truly sitting on." Zaria frowned. "Why now? Why go through all this?" "Because your silence has value," Emile said, "and so does your loyalty. I want you to see it with your own eyes before you choose a side." I shook my head. "This is manipulation." He turned to me. "You're just afraid she'll start asking questions you can't answer." "I've told her everything that matters," I said firmly. "Have you?" he asked. "Did you tell her what happened in Lisbon? Or Cairo?" I didn't flinch. "That's between you and me." Zaria looked between us. What happened in Cairo? I didn't answer right away. The truth sat heavy on my tongue, bitter and cold. Emil saw the hesitation and took his opportunity. She was assigned to eliminate a contact who had intel on your father's black market deals, he said. But she hesitated. She let him go. That man was later found dead anyway, but not before leaking documents that nearly destroyed your family's financial holdings. Your father covered it up, and Celine took the blame quietly. Zaria's eyes widened. Is that true? Yes, I said quietly, but not the way he's telling it. That contact was a double agent. He had no intention of leaking anything. I let him go because he was trying to leave the trade. He had a daughter. He wanted out. And he ended up dead, Emil added. Not by my hand, I said. He was killed by the same people who hired him in the first place. I made a call based on what I knew. I stand by it. Zaria stepped back, processing everything. I watched her closely. Emil sensed the shift. See? She's questioning everything now. The truth always shakes the foundation. I stepped closer to him, weapon still raised. Then tell her all of it. Tell her what you did in Berlin. Tell her about the families you destroyed just to make a point. He tensed. They were collateral. The system you defended made them that way. You chose to be part of that system too, I said. You just changed sides when it no longer served you. He moved a hand toward his coat. I stepped forward instantly. Don't. But he pulled out a flash drive and held it up. This holds everything, he said. Every document, every transaction, every lie your family buried. Give this to the public and the empire collapses. Zaria stared at it. Why give it to me? She asked. Because you're the only one who can decide what to do with it, he said. If you destroy it, nothing changes. If you expose it, you tear down your own legacy. Either way, you choose the path forward. She looked at me, then back at him. And what happens to you? He smiled faintly. That depends on how much you value retribution. I reached out and took the flash drive from him. We're not playing your game. You already are, he replied. We slowly backed toward the exit, weapon still raised. His men didn't move. He let us go without resistance. That was the part that worried me most. Back at the safe house, Zaria sat at the dining table, the flash drive resting in front of her like a ticking clock. What do we do now? She asked quietly. We go through it, I said, piece by piece. And then you decide what to do, but you do it on your terms, not his. She nodded. I want to know everything. We spent the next 3 days reviewing files, decrypting layers of information, connecting names and numbers to real events. The more we uncovered, the more Zaria saw how deeply the roots of her family's empire were tangled with questionable deals. But it wasn't just corruption. There were also efforts to clean things up, hidden initiatives to reverse damage, to fund recovery projects quietly. Her father had started to make changes before his health declined. It wasn't all bad, she said one evening, scrolling through one of the last documents. He tried to fix some of it, but he couldn't fix everything. No one can, I said, but now you get the chance to do it better. She looked at me. What if I release this and it destroys everything? Then you rebuild it. Stronger. Cleaner, your way. She was silent for a moment, then took a deep breath. Then that's what I'll do. She released a public statement the next day. Not everything was revealed at once, but enough to begin a reckoning. She announced a full internal audit, restructuring of business practices, and a new transparency initiative. Some investors pulled out. Some media outlets stirred controversy, but others supported her. The public responded with cautious optimism. In the midst of the storm, Zaria stood firm, confident, clear. And I stood beside her, no longer just a protector, but a partner in every sense. Do you enjoy lesbian romance and passion in your life? Subscribe to our channel Anastasia TV for daily new and exciting lesbian love stories every day of the week. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay up to date on our latest uploads. We can't wait to share more romance with you.